My uncle called me a failure at Thanksgiving in front of everyone, so I bought his house at auction after. He defaulted and never told him who owned it, a 28-year-old guy, and Thanksgiving 3 years ago still haunts me. It was one of those gatherings that looked perfect from the outside big dining table. Expensive china, everyone pretending life was good. I was already anxious walking through the door of my parents' house. My business had failed 3 months earlier. My bank account was hanging on by a thread, and I hadn't told anyone how close I was to eviction. Still, I showed up because it felt worse to give them another reason to whisper about me. Dinner started fine small talk. Forced smiles, the usual. But it only took 1 glass of wine from my Uncle Dave to turn the night into another performance. He was always the loudest voice in any room, the kind of guy who thrived on making others feel small. "So," he said, waving his fork at me, "how's that $1 million startup doing? Or should I say the $1 million flop?" The table went silent for half a second before the laughter started his booming cackle first, then my cousins joining in. My dad smirked. My mom said, "Dave, don't be mean," in that fake, soft tone that meant she didn't actually care. I forced a smile, stabbed at the mashed potatoes, and said, "It's fine. I'm figuring things out." Dave leaned back, shaking his head. "Figuring things out? Son, you're almost 30. You can't live off dreams forever. You want me to get you a job washing cars at my dealership? Might be the first time you actually earn something." The laughter came again, louder this time. It felt like every sound in the room echoed off my chest. My hands trembled under the table. My throat burned. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words never came, so I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, and locked the door. I stared at my reflection in the mirror-eye's red face, and whispered, "You'll remember this." Then I sat on the edge of the bathtub and let the sound of their laughter fade through the walls. That Thanksgiving wasn't the first time Uncle Dave had humiliated me. It was just the one that broke something inside me. He's always been like that, sharp-tongued, smug, the kind of man who needs to tear others down to feel tall. Ever since I was a kid, Dave loved to pick on me. When I got a scholarship to college, he cracked jokes about how even losers get free rides these days. When I interned at a small tech firm, instead of joining the family car dealership like everyone expected, he said I was too soft to get grease under my fingernails. And every time, my parents just let it slide. My mom would smile awkwardly and whisper, "Don't let him get to you, honey." My dad usually laughed along. "Dave's old school," he'd say. "He just wants to see you do well." But that was the thing. Dave didn't want me to do well. He wanted me to fail so he could be right. And the worst part, he always had an audience. I remember being 12, showing him a robot I'd built from scrap parts. I was proud of its bent weeks figuring out the circuits. He took one look and said, "What is that? A glorified toaster?" Then he called my cousin Tyler over and said, "Now this kid's gonna take over the family business one day." That's a real man's path. That stuck with me. Every achievement I ever had, no matter how small, was treated like a joke. Even when I launched my startup, scraped together funding, and made my first sale, my family barely blinked. Dave told me, "Hope you've got a backup plan. Genius." Ideas are cheap. I spent years telling myself it didn't bother me, that I didn't need their approval. But after that Thanksgiving, sitting on that bathroom floor with my fists clenched, I realized something. It wasn't just Dave who saw me as a failure. It was everyone at that table, and I wasn't going to let them be right. For weeks after Thanksgiving, I barely slept. I'd wake up in the middle of the night replaying every word, every smirk, every laugh that echoed around that table. I couldn't shake the image of Dave's face, the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he'd just confirmed my failure to the whole family. At first, I drowned in self-pity. I ignored texts, avoided calls, and sat in my one-room apartment staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. I felt humiliated, worthless, invisible. But one night, something in me snapped. I remember looking at the photo on my wall of family picture from that same Thanksgiving. All fake smiles and stiff posies, and I just whispered, "I'm done being their joke." That was the night the switch flipped. I started waking up early, forcing myself to work not at a job, but at a skill. I taught myself coding again, updated my old software projects, and took every freelance gig I could find. I wasn't thinking about glory or money. I just wanted to feel in control of something. The pain became fuel. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard Dave's voice saying, "You want me to get you a job washing cars?" I lived like a machine. I cut off distractions, sold half my stuff, and poured every hour into building small tools and apps for clients who barely paid me minimum wage. But I didn't care. I was learning, I was building. Some nights, I'd fall asleep at my desk, hands aching, eyes burning from the glow of the screen. And when I'd wake up to another rejection email or client complaint, I didn't feel broken. I felt challenged. I wasn't working for success anymore. I was working for silence. For the day I could sit at another Thanksgiving table and not need a single word to prove them wrong. The first version of my software was ugly, bare, glitchy, and held together with duct tape and desperation. But it worked. It was a browser-based tool that helped small businesses automate client onboarding, nothing revolutionary. Still, I knew there was a need for it because I'd lived that chaos firsthand. I launched it quietly. No press, no family announcement, just a landing page, a demo video I filmed in my dark apartment, and a PayPal button. The first week, nothing, not a single user. The second week, one guy from Idaho paid $7.99. I remember staring at that notification like it was a trophy. I took a screenshot. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my parents, and definitely not Uncle Dave. I knew if I did, it'd be "you got lucky," or worse, "don't quit your day job." So I stayed quiet. I reinvested every dollar. Every tiny customer complaint became a roadmap. Every feature, request, and opportunity. I'd walk past my parents' house sometimes on the way to the grocery store. I never went in. I didn't want to see their faces until I had something they couldn't ignore, something they couldn't mock. Month by month, my tool gained traction. Word of mouth spread it to online forums and Facebook groups. I started getting emails like, "Dude, this saved my business," or "Can you add this feature?" I was working 16-hour days, but I felt alive for the first time in years. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving me right. But deep down, there was still that scar, that Thanksgiving silence. That moment I sat in the bathroom and promised myself I'd never forget how it felt to be laughed at like I didn't matter. I wasn't done yet, not even close. It was a random Tuesday night. I'd just pushed a new update to the software, cracked open a soda, and was mindlessly scrolling through a local property auction site. I wasn't even looking to buy anything, just fantasizing. Owning a home still felt a world away. I blinked, leaned closer. It was Uncle Dave's house, his actual house. The listing didn't say his name outright, but I knew the address. I'd been there a dozen times growing up. The brick mailbox he bragged about building himself. The porch swing that creaked like a horror movie. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a listing error. But when I dug deeper public records, foreclosure notices, mortgage delinquency, I realized it was real. Uncle Dave was losing his house. I sat there staring at the screen, a dozen emotions hitting me all at once. Shock, curiosity, disbelief, and then something colder, something sharper. I whispered out loud, "No way." He was months behind on payments. The house was set to go up for auction in 30 days. And just like that, an idea took root. Not out of malice, not at first, but out of this quiet, relentless urge to flip the script. I called an old college buddy who had gone into real estate law. I asked him how the process worked, what I'd need to do, and most importantly, if I could buy it without Dave ever knowing who the buyer was. Turns out, I could. All I had to do was form an LLC, file the paperwork, and show up at the courthouse with a certified check. I closed the laptop, heart pounding. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of Thanksgiving. I was planning for it the day of the auction. I wore a plain navy hoodie and jeans. Nothing flashy. I didn't want to stand out. My lawyer friend had already prepped the documents, and the LLC we set up, Greystone Revive Holdings, was just a name on paper, completely untraceable to me. There were only 4 bidders, a couple of investors, one real estate agent, and me. I remember the moment they announced the property, Uncle Dave's house. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the room, and my heart thudded so loud I swear people could hear it. The opening bid was low. I raised my hand casually. Another investor countered. We went back and forth for maybe 4 rounds before he gave up. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was on fire. sold to Greystone Revive Holdings. That was it. I had just bought Uncle Dave's house. I walked out of that courthouse with the deed in my bag and years of buried shame bleeding out of my chest. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't even smile. What I felt was control. I didn't tell anyone, not a single soul. I hired a property manager. The next day, someone recommended by my lawyer, completely disconnected from me. The instruction was simple: manage the house professionally. Notify the tenant uncle, Dave, that the new owner had decided to keep him on. Under a new rental agreement, a week later, Dave signed it. No fight, no protest. Just a grumbling old man, too proud to admit he was desperate. He had no idea who was collecting his rent. Every month, his payments landed in an account with my name on it. The same man who humiliated me in front of my entire family was now sending me money, and I hadn't even gotten started. Every time the rent came in, I stared at the deposit like it was a private trophy. Devuncle fricking Dave was paying me to live in the house he used to boast about owning outright. He signed the new lease without asking many questions. The property manager handled everything. Dave probably assumed it was just another faceless investment firm buying up foreclosures like they always do. He even made a comment to my dad at a family BBQ later that month. Some Wall Street baby probably owns half the town now. I stood 10 feet away, sipping a beer and trying not to laugh. That house had always been his identity. He'd bring it up at every family dinner, bought it with my own hands. Solid oak floors, paid off early like a real man. Now, he couldn't even afford to keep the gutters clean. I started fixing it up behind the scenes. Quiet renovations, roof repairs, plumbing upgrades, new water heater, all through contractors I hired anonymously. I wanted the place to look good, but I also wanted him to know someone was investing in it. Someone who wasn't him. The property manager reported that Dave kept trying to bargain down the rent, always bringing up how he knew the value of the place. I told her to politely decline. Every time, sometimes, I'd drive past the house and just sit in my car across the street, watching the lights flick on in the evening, watching him walk out to collect his mail or water the patchy lawn, and every single time I thought about that Thanksgiving, the mashed potatoes going cold while he laughed at me, my own parents looking away. I wasn't looking away anymore. Before any of this, before the business, before I could even afford to eat 3 meals a day, hit a point I don't talk about much. It was a cold February night, 2 years before I bought Dave's house. I'd just been rejected from yet another job I was overqualified for. My checking account had $18. I hadn't paid rent in weeks, and my landlord had started sliding passive-aggressive notices under the door. I remember standing outside a gas station at 11:30 p.m., hungry as hell. I didn't even go in for food. I just needed to warm my hands on the vent near the back wall. I was wearing this thin hoodie, shaking, watching couples come and go with snacks and coffee like they were living in another world. In a moment of weakness, I texted my dad, "Hey, I'm in a rough spot. Can you help me out with like $40 just until Friday?" He read it. I saw the read receipt, don't reply. I sat down on the curb behind the station, knees pulled to my chest, and I cried. Not because of the money, but because that moment confirmed something I'd felt for years. No one in my family actually believed in me. It wasn't just Dave, it was all of them. That night, I almost gave up. I don't mean that lightly. I had no plan, no hope, just this aching, empty feeling that I was worthless. But something in me refused to die. I made myself a promise. The next time they hear from me, it won't be a cry for help. It'll be a headline. That's what kept me going. Not ambition, not ego. Just that one sentence replaying in my head like a war drum. And now, here I was. With my uncle paying rent to the failure he once humiliated, the next Thanksgiving came faster than I expected. By then, the software business had exploded. I'd onboarded 3 full-time developers. My monthly revenue had crossed 6 figures. And I was finally living in a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows instead of a shoebox with peeling paint. And still, I RSVP'd yes to my parents' Thanksgiving invite. Part of me wasn't sure why. I didn't need closure. I didn't want their approval. Maybe I just wanted to see them all, again see if anything had changed. Spoiler, it hadn't. Uncle Dave was already half a beer in when I walked through the door. Same polo shirt, with the little barbecue sauce stain near the collar. Same gravel-thick voice, booming over everyone else's. He gave me that fake chummy slap on the back and said, "Heard you're still doing that computer thing. Must be nice to work in your pajamas." Then he laughed again. I smiled politely, didn't say a word, just handed my mom the wine I brought and took a seat near the far end of the table. Dinner was awkward, like it always was. My parents asked about my freelancing, and I gave them vague answers. Dave bragged about how his new landlord was some faceless company with no soul, how he was sure they were robbing him blind. I took a sip of wine and listened. He went on about how the housing market was corrupt, how lazy millennials were ruining the economy, and how he had once owned 3 properties without a dime of debt. I kept my face still, but inside I was on fire, because the house he once used as a badge of honor, the one he mocked me from, he now rented from a company I created from scratch, and he still didn't know it was supposed to stay anonymous. That was the plan. Let him pay rent. Let him stew. Let karma whisper instead of scream. But life doesn't always stick to the script. A few months after that Thanksgiving, I got a call from my property manager. She sounded tense. Dave's 2 months behind. He's ignoring notices. What do you want to do? I hesitated. For a second, I considered just letting her handle it, keeping my distance. But something in me said go. Not for revenges to face it. So I told her to set up a fake buyer inspection. Said I was interested in possibly selling the property, and I wanted to walk through it personally. She arranged the time. Dave agreed. I showed up in a clean black jacket, clipboard in hand. My heart was pounding before I even rang the bell. He opened the door, grumbling, probably expecting some investor in loafers. When his eyes met mine, he froze. "I've never seen that much color drained from someone's face in real time," he said, voice small. I nodded once. "Yeah, me." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. I could see the math trying to add up in his head. Why I was there, how I was involved. Then it hit him. "You own this place." "Been collecting rent for over a year," I said, calm as stone. "Through a company I built. You signed the lease yourself." He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. No jokes, no laughter. Just silence. "I never meant," he started, but I cut him off. "You did. You meant every word." I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just walked past him into the hallway of my house. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking in the room. Dave didn't follow me right away. I walked through the living room slowly, eyes scanning the house like a stranger. Except I wasn't. I knew every inch of this place, every creak in the floorboards, every stained corner he used to boast about fixing with his bare hands. He finally stepped inside, shutting the door behind him like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I heard him exhale shakily. "I didn't know," he mumbled. Why would you even want this place?" I turned around and looked him dead in the eyes. "Because this is where you humiliated me for years. And now you live here. Because I let you." He sank into the armchair near the window, the one he always used to sit in like a throne during family dinners. Now he looked small in it, like a man who realized the kingdom was never really his. "Please," he said, rubbing his face. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just teasing. I thought we were family." That word hit me harder than I expected. "Family doesn't break someone down every chance they get," I said. "You didn't want me to succeed? You wanted me to fail so you could keep feeling important." He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "Are you going to kick me out?" I paused. Part of me wanted to. God, it would have been easy. A clean eviction notice, 2 weeks to vacate, case closed. But something in me shifted. I wasn't that angry, bitter kid anymore. "No," I said slowly. "You can stay. If you pay what's owed on time, no discounts, no deals, just like anyone else." His shoulders slumped. "Okay, I will." I headed for the door. "You're not the failure, he said behind me. "You never were." I didn't respond. I just walked out, because I didn't need his validation. Not anymore. Dave still lives in that house. The same brick mailbox. The same creaky porch swing. But the man sitting behind the front window, he's quieter now, smaller. Like the house itself doesn't listen to him the way it used to. Rent arrives on time. Every month, the property manager handles everything, just like before. I've never raised the rate, never retaliated. I don't need to. I haven't told my parents, or the rest of the family, There was never some grand reveal, no victory speech at Christmas dinner. It's not a story I needed to shove in their faces, because I didn't do this for them. I did it for me, and for the kid I used to be, the one who sat in that bathroom on Thanksgiving. Fists clenched, eyes wet, heartbroken. Sometimes I drive past the house just to remind myself how far I've come. I park across the street, windows up, engine quiet. I watch Dave pull weeds in the front yard or shuffle out with the trash. And I wonder if he thinks about that day I showed up at his door. I think he does, because after that, he never made another joke. Never interrupted me at family dinners. Never called me Mr. Startup Failure again. He just nods now. Sometimes even avoids my gaze. And honestly, that's enough. I've moved on. I've expanded the business, hired a team, invested in other startups. I bought a house of my own, nothing flashy, but it's mine, and it's quiet. Some people think revenge has to be loud, explosive. But real power, real closure, it's quiet. It's walking away without a grudge. While they live every day knowing they lost, I forgave Dave for my own peace. But I'll never forget what it felt like to be laughed at tanned. I'll never let anyone put me back in that seat again.